Alright guys, Hatch coming again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far as the countdown to the World Championship continues. Big discussion last night on what needs to change going forward and what the league should have done differently in the lead up to this tournament. OpTic's coach JP suggests that a different format leading into the World Championship, especially around about now, could be massively important in future seasons to keep the momentum of the year alive. Do we just need to burn this down and go back to what it used to be back in the day? Lots of discussion on that last night. BenJ gives his thoughts as well in quite some detail. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Just first of all, to start with this, wanted to say there has been more happening today, so we are going to do a couple of videos. I want to do 2 videos every day if there's enough to talk about. We will do that today. Hopefully that's going to be the case for the coming days as well. It's just as we know, this period has not exactly been spectacular, and I think the league, and to be fair, maybe other factors as well, have had a part to play in that. We'll get to in a second. I thought this is really cool. The guys put together, Lion Man, another designer that we brought on, put together this poster for the World Championship, and I think this is fire, honestly, with all respect to the different gyms. We saw kind of the gym, like gems or whatever, the other day, vying for supremacy for the World Championship. This is Scrappy in the middle here with the Thieves side. Of course, Cellium very recognisable on the left-hand side. This, I'm sure, is Neptune for the Vancouver Surge. This looks like Snoopy, even the little character looks like the Snoopy the dog thing. This is Slasher, of course, with the hat, right, for the Ravens. For the 8 teams that are here with the World Championship, you got Insight for Toronto. That looks like Rancor for the Miami Heretics. And then, of course, there's a couple of nice little Easter eggs, I think, in here as well, with Shotzzy, of course, with the shirt on, which has the bricks on it, right? Brick by brick, green wall, all that type of stuff. If you guys actually want to get this, it's available as a poster on the website, 24 inches by 36 inches, printed and shipped around the world. Thought the guys did a great job putting this together, and it comes out at an interesting time, right? Because people are talking about building up some hype for the World Championship, at least something going on, and, well, you know, the boys trying their best, and the league dropped this yesterday as well. They say Friday eyes emoji. Now, pretty funny, because people saw this and were like, Friday? Like, it's champs this weekend? The amount of people, like, I think it's unacceptable for the league that I've seen so many people, sometimes in the comments of these videos, on Reddit, on Twitter, being like, wait, is champs this weekend? When's champs, right? Like, is champs already happened? Like, what's going on? And I think it's just outrageous that this is the world we live in, right? People are seeing this tweet and saying, Friday? Does champs start this Friday? Because nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. Just to make it clear, Champ starts next Thursday on the 26th of June. That is the date, and that's been the date for a while. But nobody knows, because it feels like the year's over already. The World Championship is obviously coming up and hasn't really been talked about much. And then the COD League, even though they tweeted out the schedule the other day, they didn't even include the date. I mean, if we just have a quick look down the COD League's page, obviously there's a few things going on, but this is what I was looking for. Yeah, they put together a weekend schedule for day 1. But it's like day 1 when, day 1 where, right? Like, it doesn't say. So, I don't know. The whole process has been far from ideal, I would say. And then you've got this, right? So they're dropping what presumably is some sort of piece around Neptune, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, got a nice little story on Neptune. Obviously, it's been a big talking point of the season, right? You know, he's not exactly an MVP candidate, but he's not too far away. Surge made a couple of grand finals. He definitely invigorated that team since joining the roster. Really cool story of the year. So they're dropping, it seems, some sort of content piece Friday, but it's like, well, you know, what's this meant to mean? Friday? Is Champ starting Friday? Is this Neptune piece coming out Friday? Why aren't there more pieces maybe that the teams could have done instead? Or, and like, it's not all necessarily on the league, we'll get to, but that is certainly the key component. So BenJ drops a big tweet last night that got plenty of interaction, and I think for very good reason. We're about 9 days away from Champs. It's now 8 days away, and there has been virtually no marketing push from the league to promote the event. It happened last year too, but they got bailed out because OpTic were running the event. They both ran a great event, and they made a deep run. The league in 6 years has yet to maximise, he goes on to say, the league in 6 years has yet to effectively maximise its marketing potential during both the pre-season and post-season windows. Plenty of things they can do that don't require a lot of money, need to full-on rethink for next season. So there was lots to talk about this, the way that things could be approached going forwards, you know, why it's been pretty lacklustre, what the league needs to change. And look, people call him Suit JoeDeceives or whatever, right? But I think he's being, you know, fairly critical in this instance. I will say as well, last year there was more hype for Champs, in some part because, okay, it was OpTic's Champs. They'd just come top 12 the previous tournament, so there was like a huge storyline there as to like, okay, OpTic, They won earlier in the season. They're going to their home world championship. They've not won one in 7 years. And, this is going to be the opportunity to probably do so again. But it was, all up in the air because they just bombed out of the previous tournament. But they themselves, OpTic, did some great content in the lead up. You guys probably remember Scump sat down with all of the players and did basically a podcast with Pred, with Shotzzy, with Dashy, of course, and with Kenny going into the World Championship. And yeah, it was a mega kind of few series of videos that OpTic put together. And look, in hindsight, had they not won, would they have got kind of clowned for it or whatever? Could they do the same again this year? Sure, they could with the team. But of course, last year it was their champs. So they were building up the storylines and helping to do so. Whereas for this year, sure, if OpTic wanted, they could sit down with the players and do something similar. It would be good content that we would be certainly very much down to watch. But it doesn't quite align in the same way, because this year it's not their world championship that they're promoting, as it were. It's hosted by somebody else. Have Toronto put stuff together? Well, yeah, they have, and we'll talk about Toronto and what they've been doing in a second. Maybe it's not been optimal from them, and maybe in hindsight they will feel like they could have approached it differently, but equally stuff like this isn't really existing, right? So, I think you could argue it goes both ways, that the teams have to contribute as well, as do the league itself, which, sure, fair enough, but also this in hindsight was one of the reasons why this didn't really feel like this last year, and the timings also were slightly different. So there's a few issues, as we know. The season is relatively short, the season starts arguably too late. I mean, certainly this year not having an event in December, November is always a loss. I think we always want that. It's not happened since Raleigh we did a couple of years ago. I think it was 2022, was it? They did the kickoff in Raleigh, and it was a pro-am event as well, which is mega. I think that's absolutely integral to the health of the scene, is to have some sort of pro-am tournament right at the start of the season where all the players can go to and compete. The lack of Q4 event, as he says, a December-November event, is a massive momentum killer coming off launch. 24 league matches a year is not a good solution for programming in between majors, which I think is probably fair as well. And also after the season, it's also clearly not been optimal either. This upcoming year may be better. There are rumours, well, I think it's even been confirmed, that DreamHack Stockholm is happening at the end of November in Sweden, right? In Stockholm, Sweden. There is talk about potentially having the Call of Duty kickoff then and there, which would make, to be honest, an awful lot of sense. I'd be down for it for sure. We've seen over the last couple of years, we end up having like a couple of weeks of league matches before Christmas, and then it all goes quiet over the New Year period, and people forget about costs. So, it happens all the time. There's a lot of things that we could think about here. We've talked about crowdfunding for years, but I will say that for the World Championship, Counter-Strike has, as the gentleman, says in the replies, maybe they have the blueprint, right? And we've talked about this for a long time. The idea of, okay, in CS, when a major happens, they have the coins, and you can buy the coin, and then you do the pick'ems in the Counter-Strike client. And then basically, if you do well or badly, then you can rank up the coin, level up the coin. There's stickers, right, that you can get from the players. There's the capsules. Like, CS have had this nailed for years. And I'm not saying it would be easy to execute it in the world of COD, but at least to take some sort of the ideas, right? I mean, the Counter-Strike majors, the Dota internationals, there is something serious that they make work here that we've just never really done in COD. And yeah, the Champs Pack revenue goes to the teams, so great start on that one, I guess. But it's not as all-encompassing as it potentially could be. But also, the Counter-Strike majors are such a big moment for the community because it starts to appear in the client, right? You go to play CS, you see all the talk about the major, get your coin so you can try and get the diamond one, right? Like, that's how it goes. And, there's all sorts of talk about how we could execute something like that in COD, even if it's outside of just the format discussion in general. Now, this is where JoeDeceives comes into play. And there was, lots of reaction to this one because, as Benjay says, see the stupid-ass comment all the time. If they didn't, so this guy says they don't care. If they didn't care, we wouldn't have a league and they wouldn't fund a single esport competition with their IP. Clearly they care enough to invest millions each season to make it happen. Could they do a better job? Yeah. Now, there was obviously some talk in the replies, such as from Bantz, who says, well, what does he say? You're an idiot if you can sit there and say they care. They do the bare minimum to make it a tax write-off being a marketing tool. Now, I wouldn't say it's precisely a tax write-off because it is a serious investment. At the end of the day, it's marketing. It's basically marketing money, right? I think what is frustrating, right, is that I think it's actually a really good marketing tool. It's just, it seems like Activision will spend millions and millions of dollars on putting up billboards and doing like all sorts of advertisement for the new Call of Duty games, and arguably spend way more than they need to on that level of advertising. And some of the return on investment you get, return on ad spend you get, ROAS or whatever they say in the marketing world, on this type of stuff in real life is maybe not even anywhere near as good as it could be, whereas some of that money could go, it wouldn't take that much additional money to make the league far better, but a proper good competitive product around the league, in my opinion, definitely makes it more inspiring for people to play and to watch and to continue investing their time into. So anyway, that's part of the debate as well. Chino says, if they don't fund it as much, is that not the same as saying they don't really care? If they cared enough, we wouldn't telling them to do better. I'm just talking about the people that are actually in charge, not the ones who you see at events who actually show up and trying to make it successful with whatever's given to them, which I think is also fair to understand on the structure here. Guys like Daniel say, could he do a better job? Could he do more? Possibly. I mean, I don't know what he does on a day-to-day, but also I know that I imagine he's been handicapped to some degree by the budget that comes down from up top. And that is what it is at the end of the day. So, look, lots of frustrations, understandably. The question really does become, what could they have done differently this time to make it substantially better? And this is where a couple of the OpTic guys get involved in their opinions. Even Aaron creates, is this the venue? Which it is. This is the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium where the World Championship is going to be held, and I know there was talk about it yesterday. Now, at the end of the day, Toronto always run great Call of Duty events. Every event that I've been to that's been run by Toronto has been fantastic. They always do a killer job. I'm sure the event itself is going to be great. There's just other factors in play, not just the whole Kitchener thing, but also, the way that things have been run this season, which are causing issues. And this is when JP gives his thoughts, and I think I even mentioned this yesterday in the video, but I think the way that JP puts it is pretty nice, and there's also other ideas you could have done as well. But look, if Major 4 is going to be where it is, and we've got a month until Champs, something had to happen between Major 4 and Champs. There had to be something going on. I know that it feels strange to go from the final Major to something else before the big tournament, but I think it frankly had to be done. As JP says, what if we brought in another minor tournament, right? Like the same thing we had during Major 1, Major 2, throw that in between Major 4 and the World Championship, right? The 8 teams that made it to Champs, they get an online minor tournament, throw up 20k for the prize pool, nothing spectacular, and there's no seeding implications. It's purely an online tournament leading up to Champs where the teams get a little bit of an opportunity to play. Going into Champs, there's a bit of money on the line, and it's going to create some storylines. This is always the key one, right? Creating the storylines. And if they're not being created because nothing is happening, then it creates an issue. I think the same thing would arguably also be true if there was some sort of all-star weekends, right? We used to have it back in the day. It wouldn't, okay, they've not announced the all-stars yet. That's going to happen at the World Championship as it did last year. But I think they probably should do. And, if it's not going to be a little minor online tournament between Major 4 and Champs, if there is going to be a 4-week gap, there should be something that they're getting the players to do. And maybe the players won't be happy about it because they want to just lock in and play for Champs, but unlucky. This is the way that the league is going to be, and 2 weekends before Champs, you're going to have to do this thing. And to be fair, that's even flattering for the pros anyway, because back in the day, there only used to be a 2-week gap. It used to be the final event of the season, then the World Championship was 2 weeks later. This year, without the final event of the season, 2 weeks later, there should have been something, and there wasn't. That was the most recent weekends. Then 2 weeks after that is the World Championship, right? So that's what JP says. How much the players would agree and be on board with this, I think probably they would be, and certainly it would be hugely important for the fans and the state of the scene in general. But I will say that Toronto have stepped up. They are delivering the goods here. Now, I don't know if they're doing this just based on some of the recent feedback, but as he says, we heard you needed your COD fix before Champs. We have a tournament to come. So in a couple of days' time, on the 20th to the 21st of June, there is a 10k double elimination tournament with 13 challenger teams, 3 CDL teams. So it's actually really cool. Like, they've got a tournament to come. They're putting this on. The league was retweeting it and all this stuff. So like, who they've worked with to make this happen. It obviously looks like it's going to be an AMD powered tournament. Which teams are getting invited? I'm fascinated. I mean, I'm sure Toronto are playing. the other two? Don't know, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments on that. But I think this is going to be great for the scene, and arguably something that either the league should have put on themselves or something to that effect other teams could have got involved in. I know there was some talk in yesterday's comments that, like, it'd be perfect time for a K-Sun LAN, which, you know, it's some sort of tournament anyway. I think we're getting that tier finally. So the World Championship might not be cooked just yet, but certainly a lot to learn going into future seasons. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.